Hello. Wow, there's a beaming. I can't believe the light here. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a project that's funded through the Massachusetts Specialty Crop Block Grant titled Risky Business, Conducting a Risk Assessment of Post-Harvest Operations Using Washing Machines for Leafy Greens. Has anyone, well, I know that this room is a mixed group of produce and processors, regulators and educators, but speaking from my personal experience and being thankful to my shutout peeps of Massachusetts, MDARG posse, I was humbled to realize the practice of washing machines being a spin cycle in operation. And I thought, oh, is this one person? Oh no, it's like a thing. And then I realized, okay, well that's a thing, so let's kind of look at those pieces. And then, FSMA came about, and we realized sanitation's now in the rule. How do you clean things? I don't know. How do you clean that? I don't know. Well, what can we do about this? So the problem in gist is washing machines for spinning greens is a common practice, and for those in the room, you know this. And we don't have any real research about this practice. And so taking a moment to think about last year, and I guess this is my shout out of, I have drank the Kool-Aid of NECAFS, and I am really, all of that kumbaya of collaboration and duking it out of, I find, this is sharing that I find NECAFS kind of like a therapy for me, because it validates my food safety concerns, and it gives me new ideas about how to move forward to things, and it gives me the tool belt of the Rolodex of who can help me with these types of questions that I struggle with, that I don't have answers and want recommendations for producers or processors. And so at last year's meeting, in one of the steering committee sessions, at the end, like, rah, rah, that was a great meeting, and we found all these great things. And then we got to a situation of talking about produce. Any steering committee members remember this? And so we had regulators, extension agents, producers, and buyers, and we brought the elephant to the room about washing machine practice. Like, some people were like, what, they do that? And then extension people were like, yeah, of course they do. And regulators were saying, well, what are we supposed to do about that? Like, we can't, that's not in the rule. And we said, where in the rule does it say anti-washing machine? Like, it doesn't, so we're at a nexus. And then Betsy goes, well, if we just had a grant, we could do that. And I thought, well, if I just had some people to do that, we could try to do that. And so, ergo, here we are. This is the project, okay? So I hope that you've listened hard to what Chris and Elizabeth mentioned this morning about having these conversations, because it's driven a lot of the extension efforts that my team has been working on in integrated research and extension. And so this project specifically is looking at those challenges with sanitation and design and management. So we just started this project in January, and I just want to highlight the key objectives here. So washing machines are the issue, and we want to come up with a way to address it. So the first thing is to identify, source, and build converted washing machines for drying leafy greens using the do-it-yourself resources provided from industry that are applicable to small-scale leafy green operations. And then separate to that, conduct science-based risk hazard identification assessments that will help investigate the harborage and sanitation risks of using these do-it-yourself converted washing machines for drying leafy greens. And then the end, it is the classic extension go share this knowledge, develop and design mixed media portfolio of extension-based tools that will focus on the principles of cleaning and sanitation, but also sharing the results of our outcomes. So I am not an agricultural engineer, so I had to make the objective. I don't know how to make these things, so that was my first objective, figure it out. Identify, resource, and build do-it-yourself washing machines. And so first we wanted to investigate those resources of what exists, and then source and actually build them. So for those that haven't seen this operation, this is a preferred option where you can retrofit let's see, pull this laser pointer here. You see that? So you rip apart the washing machine, pull out the draining pipe, so it just has the operation for spin. And this orange one are harvest bins that you can put the product directly in there, so there's a secondary layer, so you can have it a little bit removed from the spin cycles itself. Okay, so the second question we wanted to ask ourselves, the research questions we want to look at are, what is that overall contamination risk of using these do-it-yourself converted washing machines for drying leafy greens? And then the second question is, well, can these units, can they be washed and cleaned, and what type of practices might help mitigate those concerns if we find them? And then when we talk about the extension programmings, we're hoping to do a myriad of things to kind of engage in a diversified platform. So the brief tutorials of how we did this and fact sheets related to the outcomes and that type of stuff. So where are we right now is building the units. And the story kind of goes a little bit wider of this. We talked a little bit this morning about collaboration. And because of these meetings, I'm aware of some other activities simply because we're having these conversations. And so a great shout out to UVM Extension is they had already, serendipitously, right, you write this grant and then time goes by and you forget about it and then you get the money and you say, oh geez, you had to dust off the cobwebs of how to do what we're gonna do. And at the time, Chris's team had started doing workshops about do-it-yourself leafy green spinners, which was fantastic for us because I have to build washing machines on this. So we went up to their workshop with Andy and Chris to learn the ins and outs of how to do this. And this is a picture of us trying to do this. And then we started, thanks to the collaboration of Andy, came back to UMass and helped us pull these washing machine units. And so what was kind of interesting is just this evolution and continuing to keep apprised of each other's work. We wrote our grant thinking we were going to use 4 or 5 different washing machine models. But then when I was able to see how their extension program is working on how to retrofit these washing machines with high-end and low-end washing machine units, like this unit here, the one on the left is a lower cost washing machine compared to this one in the black has a brake. And the designs are a little bit different. So we changed our design of how we're going to work on our machine units to parlay what they're doing. So we've got the same units that are already written of protocols of how to do it. And now we're looking at using the same machine so we can kind of, this is how you build it. This is the risks affiliated with these units. And then another great conversation to this story was, as Andy and I were talking about the actual building, we realized, oh, wait, what if they come out wicked bad? Now what? I totally hose you. That's not cool, right? So I guess I want to share this because this is the stuff that's real, right? Like I'm hoping that the results of this is shareable regardless of the outcome. But thinking about the stuff that already exists, we want to be very strategic about those outcomes. And so we also add a traditional produce unit, which is significantly more expensive, and growers don't usually use it because it's wicked expensive, and it doesn't have the same throughput, and the ergonomics are horrible, but that is a commercial grade, and compare that up against the muster. So that we can actually see all of these risks against the industry standard. So that is all that I have to say right now, other than I am not really good with a drill. And so I've had to thank Andy again to come out to help us with assembling these, and my team at UMass that have helped me do that. But this kind of work has just, it gets in, now I'm in the weeds and I won't bore you with the details, but in terms of like, building the washing machines is one hurdle. But now, on the technicality of where we are right now is shaking out our experimental design. And that now, anytime you inoculate anything, even if it's a non-pathogen, like our plan is to use Listeria innocua, if you spin, it counts as an aerosol. So now I have to try to overcome the UMass environmental health and safety to demonstrate that we've got the units quarantined so there's no aerosols. And the details don't matter for today, but other than, to do this type of work is a little bit more complicated, and to do it right, that identifies the risks, substantiates with evidence the science, so we can advocate a direction is important, but it is kind of a hurdle. So I'm thankful that I have this group to give me a reality check of the types of practices that we want to think about in the experimental design. And I'm thankful for the resources that I have at UMass with the microbiological team to make sure that the work that we do is publishable and reproducible, and all of those pieces together so that the work can be relevant and applied and used. So that is all that I have to say. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
UVM has created this stuff, but have you put out a general call for like food safety upgrades that people need in these machines? Because these machines were going on for a long time.
Yeah.
And then this is happening a lot, and also a lot of people got gap infections and other things. So there have been a lot of food safety upgrades made, do it yourself, like out there.
Yeah.
Have you made a general call to see what people are doing or that kind of thing?
Yeah, so the question is, have we made a general call about the common practice of what's going on in the real world, and how does that fit into the design that we're working on? Did I answer that? That's the question? Yes, so the brief answer is, yeah, that is part of my plan. So right now, we're shaking out of the HNS experimental parts, and then the other part, I think you just brought up my shout out. The other part I have is to get some surveys of the practice. And so when we were at that workshop with UVM Extension, it was pretty crazy to see all, Chris and I were talking with our eyes, like, wow, that's really gross. Washing machine, I have pictures if you want to see biofilms, but I don't have the data to know, like, it looks gross, but how bad is it in the secondary chambers, et cetera. So I'm trying to look at how can we get some data to look at what's the real practice, and compound that with what am I actually capable of doing in the lab so I kind of feel like I need to understand the street practice, what's happening for real, but then do our experimental designs in a controlled setting to get some baseline data, and then try to bring it back to, okay, well, if you're doing it this way, here's some options we can explore. Yes.
So I sit on my university's biosafety committee.
Yeah.
And this is a biosafety nightmare, right? And getting approval. The good news is, I don't know if you guys know this, produce is really dirty. And so my advice to you would be, don't use Listeria innocua, just use regular good old-fashioned dirty produce, right? And then track total weight mass. Because you should be able to convince your university biosafety committee that this is no more risky than what farmers are already doing. So that would be my advice to you.
Thank you. So the reason why I was going to try to go for innocua, that's my backup plan, but I'm going for the full Monty because I was able to pull over an EHNS before in a brush washer, which has a similar aspiration, and I was able to show that I could quarantine it, wait 5 minutes. So that's I appreciate that.
Well, and bring preliminary data, that's always very helpful.
Yes, thank you for that. Any other questions? Yes.
As a regulator, I see this a lot, especially hydroponics. As you're trying to get data to back up, and there's a lot of bacteria and Listeria inside the washing machines, wouldn't it be better to get that data?
So the issue is I can't find the data. So I have conducted some superficial, non-publishable environmental swabs of this practice on one farm that was nice enough to let me in, and it wasn't pathogenic, it was just baseline. I don't have the data. If anyone has data, that's a shout out. If anyone has data on environmental monitoring about washing machine practice, bring it on. I would welcome that because it can help drive the project, but I couldn't find it. And if you do, from a grant, in your world, you want science, and you want it in a peer-reviewed journal, no one's doing that. They're hiding these suckers, so when you come along, right, I don't do that at school, that's just where I wash my underwear. Because it's like a...
They put it on the clean line for the resolution, and they're cleaning it. That's acceptable.
Right, but... To the best of that was the motivator of this project, is I didn't have the data. Does anyone else know of data that I don't know about? So that was kind of how we started. And rather than implicate any grower, let's start in the lab to at least generate something to get the ball rolling. And from my experience with regulators, it's all over the place of acceptance. And so kind of in that spirit of aligning it, let's have some data so that those that we're just real about what the practices are and what are the mitigating strategies if you see this type of thing on film.
Especially if a grower is not going to just accept, say.
No, exactly, and that's kind of, exactly. Yep, yep.
Well, thanks, Amanda. I'm going to ask Robert Haddad to start heading up here. A couple final points on that. One is there's active work being done in developing guidance for hygienic design for produce farms. Betsy Bin and myself, along with Andy Chamberlain, are working on that. I'll have a poster on that tonight. And the other thing is anybody with more interest in washing machine green spinners, Andy, who's back on the soundboard, is we'll have a poster on that project tonight as well, which includes Andre. Andy stays very much in touch with current practice and additional improvements to the machines. One of the key things we have run into, to your point, Anita, is it seems like it should be easy. Just go out in the field, swab, see what the risk is, right? To Amanda's point, the minute we do that, those growers are taking a different kind of risk by exposing their operations to now the knowledge that we develop. So it's a key hurdle for all of us to think about in trying to develop research projects to inform practice. It takes a lot longer than it should, but it's going to have to be the way, I think. So.